English. Hi, my name's Julien. I'm German, but I live in London. I've been there for 2 years now, working at a company that makes software in Perl, and my job is training new Perl developers. I've talked about this in the past, and now I'm going to talk a bit more about how we actually go about not the training itself, but measuring progress within the training. So the talk's called Progressing from Humans to Developers, which is about a progression framework. And I'm going to explain what that means once it actually works. Skipping slides. Let's see if this works. It doesn't. That's a shame. Live demo never works. You know, it's a bit rubbish. Why doesn't this work? Yeah, it hates me. It's CGIPM broke it, I think. There we go. So this should, there we go. Splendid. Okay, so about my company, Oleeo. It's in South London and it makes recruitment software, which is kind of like the same thing as when you apply for a job at Deutsche Bahn, for example. You have to go through lots of different steps to apply, and we make similar software. We've been doing that for almost 20 years in Perl, and we're currently on the third iteration of our product, which is about 12 years old in Catalyst and DBX class, so fairly modern Perl. We have a very senior development team, or at least we used to. Since I've been brought in, we've tried to make it a bit more junior by getting more people. So obviously it's hard to just hire more senior developers because there aren't that many senior Perl developers, and most senior developers don't really want to learn Perl nowadays. So they brought me in to get fresh talent in, and that seems to be working quite well. Yeah, quite well. So I'm saying it's a senior team because that's quite relevant to the motivation behind this thing I'm going to talk about specifically. So since I've joined 2 years ago, we've hired 4 trainee developers, and they're making significant contributions, and it's working out really well. I'm going to share how we're doing this. But first, remember your first tech job and think about how insecure you actually were while you were doing your first job. I mean, this wasn't easy. I know for me it wasn't easy. There were lots of things that went through my head repeatedly, and while I was confident and I was quite eager to prove myself, I didn't really know how. I didn't really know what do I have to do to be good? How do I know I'm actually doing a good job? No one told me. And I think that's the same for most of us. And so some of this is connected to imposter syndrome, which is very real, but there are other things as well. And we're going to explore kind of like reasons behind this question today. So typically when you have new trainees, so I'm using the word trainee here because I'm in the UK. If I was doing this in German, I would say auszubildende. But there's a bit of a difference. Typical questions they would have is kind of like, what is expected of me? What do they want from me? How do I know if I'm good at my job? How am I doing in general? Like, am I doing this right? And also, how do I improve? What do I need to do to get better? How long is this training program, if there is one, or the Ausbildung? Well, in Germany, obviously, the Ausbildung is 3 years long, but in the UK, the thing we're doing isn't an official training. It's just we hire people and give them the title of trainee developer, which is not quite a junior developer, but if you're straight out of uni, you're just not a junior developer yet. You might not even be a developer yet. Some of them might think something like, when do things start to get harder because I'm actually not very challenged right now? Or they might think, okay, I think I've learned all of this. What incentive do I have to actually stay here? Why shouldn't I accept this job offer that's like 10 grand more in the city? So we need to give them answers. Nick is asking a question. What? 10 grand. Oh, 10,000. 10,000. Thank you. Yeah, 10 grand is 10,000. Yeah, so they have all of these questions, but they're usually not going to ask them because, you know, asking questions is bad, right? That shows weakness, so I'm not going to ask these questions. Well, we have to answer them for them. But there's more. There are also these challenges. So obviously, hand in hand with the questions, that the beginning of your career is scary. You start this new place, you're in it's the business world suddenly, you don't know how to behave, and no one's telling you what you're actually supposed to be doing. And I think it's the same when you start at university, actually. No one's telling you what you're supposed to do. It's really hard to figure out in relation to others, am I good? But from our perspective, as the people doing the training, it's very hard not to actually compare them with each other. If you hire several, you can't just compare them. You can't say this one's better than that one, because they're different people. They're different individuals. They learn in a different way, and they have different skill sets and different abilities. And comparing them is just plain wrong, because you can't compare people, and you mustn't. So at the same time, keeping track of an entire team of people is really hard, because there are several of them, and just paying attention to one that is not yourself is already hard. Doing that to several is even harder. And in particular for my team, as in our general department, being so senior and always having worked with very, very experienced people, it was particularly hard to suddenly accept that there are fresh people that haven't really done anything like that before, that don't have much experience, and a lot of times we had to be careful, or some of the others would say things like, why do they not know this? And how can't they know this? Like, it's a waste of time to explain this to them. I'll just do it myself. And that those are like things you shouldn't, that those are traps you should fall into. So you have to grow the team slowly, but you have to make sure that these things keep in check. One way of doing that is a career progression framework. A lot of large companies have moved to having these over the last few years. In particular, one that I quite like and that I've based a lot of my work on is Monzo. That's a UK online bank. I think they've started being available in Germany as well. Their career progression framework is for the entire company, from really junior all the way up to principal developers and basically almost the CEO. Essentially, it's a structural document that explains how different roles and different hierarchical structures within the company work, and what kind of skills and behaviors you should show in order to be in one of these roles or levels. And then for some of these companies, they also attach sort of like another direction to that says you can progress within salary ranges within that thing. And then it's very clear to say, okay, I'm doing all of these things, so I'm a senior developer. That means my pay is this number. But if I start doing more team management, then I'm going to be progressing to the next higher one, and then my pay is this number. And that means there's no envy and there's no unclarity about what your job is. What it doesn't provide, though, is a rating system. So we can't go and say, here's a checklist of all the things, of all the requirements you have to have. We'll just check all of them, and if you can't check all of them, you can't get a promotion. That's not what it does. And it shouldn't be used as that. Let's take a quick look. I'm going to switch to German und vergleiche das einmal kurz mit der Berufsausbildung. Denn das ist ganz was anderes. Die typische deutsche Berufsausbildung basiert ja auf der Ausbildungsordnung, die sich irgendwie die Kultusministerkonferenz ausdenkt, und dann sitzen dann Haufen Damen und Herren zusammen und machen für jeden Ausbildungsberuf ganz viele Regeln und ganz viele Groblernziele und Kategorien, und dann wird es irgendwie beschlossen, und die Berufsschulen kriegen dann über die Landesregierung irgendwelche Rahmenlehrpläne, die sie dann in Lehrpläne umwandeln und erzählen den Schülern dann irgendwas. Und in der Firma denkt man sich einen Ausbildungsplan aus, das muss jede Firma separat machen, und da stehen dann die ganzen Ziele drin, die Auszubildenden lernen müssen, und ganz am Ende gibt es eine Prüfung. Und ja, was wir hier machen, ist ganz was anderes, denn ich kann selbst entscheiden, welches Thema wann wichtig wird. Das ist mir nicht vorgegeben, und es hat auch nicht wirklich damit was zu tun, was man alles können muss, sondern vielmehr, was man für Verhalten an den Tag legen muss, um irgendwie voranzukommen. Das heißt, es ist ganz konkret, was ist wichtig für mein Unternehmen, und nicht nur, was ist wichtig für das Individuum, das ich da ausbilde. Aber für mich ging es eigentlich immer darum, das professionelle Wachstum dieser Leute, die ich da ausbilde, in den Vordergrund zu stellen und eine ganzheitliche Ausbildung zu garantieren. Und eine ganz wichtige Rolle eigentlich für diese Progression Frameworks ist Eigenverantwortung und Transparenz, sodass jeder für sich selber sehen kann, wie weit bin ich eigentlich. Und deswegen, das sind zwei verschiedene Sachen. In Deutschland funktioniert das sicherlich beides gleich. Und für das, was ich in London gemacht habe, habe ich ganz stark auf dem deutschen System aufgebaut und sehr viel abgeschrieben. Sorry about that. That was just relevant for Germany. But it wouldn't be relevant for an international one. So, trainee career progression at Oleeo. I am only doing this for the trainees. This is not for the whole department. It's just for training. I have heavily borrowed from Monzo, and I've split my stuff up in 5 core characteristics. So those are mastery, impact, influence, communication, and leadership. All of the skills and all of the abilities and all of the behaviors that we focus on and that people should have are grouped into these 5 categories. They kind of make sense if you look at them. Mastery is domain knowledge and technical capability, so coding skills, testing skills, and domain knowledge about the product that we're building. Impact is the size, scope, and value of what you deliver. Kind of like, are you just doing tutorials? Are you writing lots of documentation? Or do you write tools that everyone uses? Or have you built a massive feature that makes us millions of euros or pounds in revenue? Influence is how you positively impact the work environment. When you build tools that make the life of your coworkers easier, or when you have good ideas that raise morale and stuff like that. Communication, obviously, is how you interact with others. Are you on time for meetings? Do you help other people when they get stuck? Do you ask people? Do you write good commit messages? All of those are communication. And then leadership is not really relevant in the beginning, but it starts being more relevant at the end of what we're going to look at, when you start helping even more junior members of the team. So that's that. There are 4 progression levels in the thing I've built, so it starts with the probation period. Obviously, this is 3 months in the UK. In the German Ausbildung would be 4 months, and exactly 4 months. And then once they've passed their probation period, we just regard them as trainee software developers. So titles in the UK are much more important than they are in Germany, because what's on your CV kind of determines what you can become next. And in Germany, it's like you're being called a programmer or a developer or something technical, and no one really cares. Just say titles don't matter, but in the UK they do. So trainee software developer, that's the big middle bit. They spend quite a considerable amount of time there, and then they get promoted to junior developers once they've fulfilled most of these criteria. And at some point they're going to leave the team, which doesn't mean they leave the company. It just means they don't report to me anymore, and I don't need to do weekly one-on-ones with them anymore. And they're just part of the regular development team on their own, which they've been before, but they stop reporting to me. So that's that. Let's look at the probation period first. As I said, it's 3 months, and obviously that's the first part of a bit of time that you use to get acquainted with the company, get used to work. You're settling in, you're learning really basics. So I do this with Perl and JavaScript. So mostly we use books for teaching them Perl, like Learning Perl or Beginning Perl. We use Geek Uni, which is an online class for Perl, and we do various tutorials and stuff like that. They have to set up their development environment, and they're doing general tutorials, sometimes the Perl Weekly Challenge or other things that kind of make sense to teach them how Perl works. And at the same time, we slowly introduce really, really simple tickets. Stuff like, here's a bug, we know what the problem is, we know what needs to be changed, you're going to go and change it. Or change all of these translations, like there's a missing placeholder, put the placeholder in, do this database patch, stuff like that. Really simple, but they're only in the beginning of their career, right? At that point, they work really closely, so they'll be talking to me multiple times a day. I just sit next to them, basically, so they can always come and talk to me, and I expect them to, show me all of their work. So this is really, really, really close, a really close working relationship. Then, once they've passed their probation, we regard them as trainee developers. They're in the longest stage. Essentially, the complexity and the size of tickets will gradually increase from really tiny to it gets a little bit more and more, and the aim of that is to build confidence into their technical and their communication skills and abilities. So I want them to be sure of themselves and say, okay, I know how to solve this, or I don't know how to solve this, but I know how to figure out how to solve this. And if I get stuck, I can go and ask, but I'm not going to ask right away because I want to figure it out on my own first. They will still work closely with me, but now also for planning. So they will slowly start writing their own tickets. They will slowly start fleshing out technical details into their tickets, really gradually, step by step. And this might take a year, maybe. So German Ausbildung takes 3 years, but it's not really, it depends on what company you're in. For this, I think a good year is probably right. The first one that we've just progressed to the next stage took a little bit more than a year. And he's been brilliant, so maybe this is working. I don't know. It might. So then after that, they become junior software developers. The title changes, again, which is important. They get a little bit of a salary bump. And essentially, they're now more self-reliant. They work on their own more. They're going to go and find their own bug tickets to do. They're going to go and talk to more people to do requirements engineering. They are sure of themselves, and they are fairly confident in decisions that they're going to make. And they're not going to need help all the time anymore. instead, they're going to start and help others that might get stuck. So it's really nice when you see one of the senior people who is using something that one of the junior people has built, go there and ask them a question. For me, that's a massive achievement in an environment where a year ago, my senior co-workers would have said, why do we even bother with this? And now they actually trust the juniors. This is really nice. So this stuff does do something useful. And when they're done being a junior developer, they're going to leave the trainee team. And at that point, they'll be integrated fully into the day-to-day operations. They're going to work independently on their own. The whole team trusts them. And then they don't need me anymore. They can still come and ask me questions, obviously. They can still talk to me. Hopefully, by that time, I'm their friend. But I don't need to manage them anymore. Yeah, so let's take a look at the goals. As I said, there are these 5 categories. I've ripped out the category, like the goals for the impact category. Quick reminder, that means the size, scope, and value of what they deliver. So during that probation period, it's basically they can work through tutorials and exercises, and they're able to take feedback and use that feedback to improve what they've done. And at the same time, we want them to be able to play around with their code and not just here's one solution, but what happens if I change this? So we want them to be confident enough into their coding abilities to not be scared to fail. So if stuff doesn't compile, yeah, okay, I'll just change it. It doesn't matter. And this sounds like it's not important, but it really is, because there are people who can't do this. And you need to be able to measure and see that people can actually try stuff. Yes, I think basics of Perl is pretty much what that is about. And yeah, the actual programming wouldn't be in impact, it would be in mastery. That's why this is about how they approach it. So this is a load of text. We don't have to go through all of them. Essentially, now they have to, in the trainee development stage, they have to be able to solve assigned tasks, deliver them, and they have to meet expected criteria. So basically, here's a ticket. You have to be able to finish it. If you get stuck, you have to be able to unblock yourself. So basically, go and ask someone. Where's the how are they asking? That's in communication, not in this one. They have to be able to manage their time effectively, be on time for meetings, and figure out their workload. And they have to know that if they ask a question now, they might interrupt me, so maybe they should wait a little bit. And they also should be aware that they might be blocking others because they're doing something that others are waiting for. So they should be able to break down small or medium problems into tiny pieces and then work through them like a checklist. So here's a smallish problem. What are the steps you're going to do? They should be able to do that. And if they have to raise a defect ticket, a bug ticket, that should be well structured. They should know which kind of details have to go in there. How do I write down how to reproduce something? And they have to be able to deliver small, well-defined tasks and projects on their own, which is different from meeting expected criteria. This is the whole delivery. They should be able to pick up defects on their own. So we have, in particular, we have this report that shows all the bug tickets. It's basically a backlog. They have to go and pick them on their own. If they don't do that, then they're not ready to become a junior developer. That's pretty much what this is. But just to remind you, we're not actually ticking boxes. Right. Then in the last one, that's the junior developer, stuff gets a bit more hard. So now they plan, create, and document their entire work on new functionalities within our products. They actively look for more work when they run out of work. So they go and pester the product management and say, hey, I have downtime, give me stuff to do. They will break down medium to large problems. So we can see they're getting a bit better and better step by step. And they can also deliver stuff across multiple tickets within one functionality. They will start thinking about long-term implications of their work, as in when I make this decision, not technically what are the technicalities of this decision, but here are 2 things. If I pick this one, what's going to happen down the road? If I pick that one, what's going to happen down the road? So like decision-making skills. And they also have to care about the performance of their work and the code they write. So you can see how it just step by step gets harder and harder. But those aren't really skills, they're more behaviors. And that's important. So how do we track that? Well, we have to be transparent about what we do and provide the full framework. This whole thing, this is actually like a 10-page document that they can see. And they can look at it all the time and say, okay, I can do all of these. Maybe I should focus on this. I have regular meetings with them and I discuss this. So I do one-on-ones every week for just 10 minutes. How are you doing? Is everything all right? Do you have any questions? Do you need any help with anything in particular that we haven't talked about? But then I do monthly progression meetings where we actually look at it and we try and identify which areas need improvement or what haven't we done yet, because we're doing actual work that actually is productive. So not all the things, like maybe we've not done databases for half a year because there wasn't a database ticket. That's okay. That doesn't mean you can't progress because you can't do this yet. It just means we need to find you some tickets to do this, to show that you can. And yeah, essentially you want to make them work and grow at their own pace. If they want to go slower, that's all right. The ultimate aim of this is to build a strong team and to build people that want to stay. And you can't do that if you force them to keep running. Some people can't run and sprint. They can walk for a really long distance, and that's great. But yeah, you have to understand how your people tick and work with them. So what else is important? Essentially, first of all, we need buy-in and trust from management. If management isn't on board with this, it's not going to work. The rest of the team needs to be okay with this, because it means junior people, they're slower, they need help. They might do all the boring tickets. They might do all the easy tickets, and then what am I going to do? I thought my job is easier if I just pick the easy tickets. I look really, I look like I'm doing a lot of work, but now those are gone because these guys are taking them. Well, so people need to be in on this, and you need to have the dedication to see this through. This is a long-term process. This is going to take 2 to 3 years to just work through one person, pretty much like an apprenticeship. But the whole company needs to be on board with it, and we need to be flexible and transparent. I think stuff that can go wrong, for example, would be that the trainees themselves think, I have to check all of these boxes, and they might go and say, like, I've done this last week, can I progress now? And that's not how it works. It's not about you have to have done all of this once. Those are not tests like in university, where you pass the test once and then you move on. This is about who you are, your core being of becoming a developer. And of course, there might be management saying, this is all nice, but you know, we're just going to promote them anyway, even though they can't do that because I like them. That shouldn't happen. But you know, sometimes we can't change how that works. So let's draw a conclusion. Does this work for me? I've started implementing this in December. We've been doing it since early January. So it's about a bit more than 2 months now, and I think it will work. It essentially provides clarity. Everyone likes how clear it is. Everyone likes how well-defined stuff is, and they like how they can look at what they should be knowing or what they should be doing and compare and contrast whether they can or cannot do that yet. They can go and think, I'm looking at the next one, like the next page, where I'm not even at, but I've been doing these things regularly. That's pretty cool. Even though I'm still lacking something here in my current stage, I'm already quite good at some in the next. So that builds confidence. Yeah, so you can really use it to evaluate progress. I've had to use it to evaluate the probation period of one of my team, and unfortunately that didn't go in their favor, but we wouldn't have been able to identify that in the way we did without this. So that helped us in the long term, because it meant we didn't retain someone who wouldn't have cut it, and that would have cost us much more to keep them around longer, and it would have been bad for them because they were unhappy. So this stuff works. It's quite positive. It can be used to deal with negatives. And we are planning to, when we're going to hire 2 more staff probably within this month, and we're planning to be so transparent that the candidates will actually get a reduced view of this thing, so they know what to expect. And we believe that that will filter out some people who aren't serious, even though they might appear quite good. But yeah, I think long term this is going to work, and this is going to make for more focused people and for more happy developers, which I think is all we really want, right? Thank you very much. I don't know if we have time for questions. Yeah, do we have time for questions? One question, okay. Gern auf Deutsch.
I can ask it. In your monthly progression meetings, who is doing most of the talking?
So the question is, in my monthly progression meeting, who is doing most of the talking? So I asked them questions like, well, I prepare a little bit. I write down some notes about what I've observed, what they've done. and then we go through those notes together, and we have a printout of all of those points that they are, well, the categories and with their individual bullet points that we went through, and we kind of go through them. They have check marks. I do use it not like a check mark, like a checklist, but I do use it like a we've seen you've demonstrated this, and then we add check marks to it, so to basically show you're still doing this or not. And I read them, and I let them elaborate whether they think they have done this or not. And I let them pick what they want to do next, and I let them identify where they think their weaknesses are right now. So I don't talk much, I'm prompt. Because basically I want them to be able to evaluate themselves, and I just validate with them. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
All right. I don't think we have more time. If anyone else has any more questions, I'm around. Just come and ask. Thank you for your time.